In today's video, we are going to learn about ER-IR verb conjugations. But before we begin, let's review what we should already know really quickly. Last week, we learned about AR verb conjugations for verbs that end in AR, like hablar. We also reviewed subject pronouns, yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. And we already know what these mean in Spanish and English. We also learned the AR verb endings for when we have to change a verb that ends in AR, like hablar, to talk or to speak. We know that our endings are going to be o, as, a, amos, an. Again, that's o, as, a, amos, an. And these endings match the person who is doing the action. So these endings are always going to be the same when we have an AR verb. We also learned about conjugating verbs, or how to change the ending of a verb. We learned about the 3 steps in order to be able to do that, and we practiced with the verb hablar, to talk or to speak. We learned that we say yo hablo, tú hablas, él, ella, usted habla, nosotros hablamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes hablan. And these endings are going to be the same no matter what type of AR verb I give you. Fantastico. We are ready to move on to ER-IR verbs, which are very, very similar. So when we have an ER verb like comer, to eat, and we have to change that verb to match the person who is doing the action, our endings are going to be o, es, e, hemos, en. Again, say it with me. O, es, e, hemos, en. And these endings are going to be the same for the person who is doing the action when we have a verb that ends in er, like comer. Moving on to verbs that end in ir, like compartir, to share. When we have a verb that ends in ir and we have to change it to match the person who is doing the action, the endings are going to be o, es, e, imos, en. Say it with me. O, es, e, imos, en. So you're very smart, and I'm sure you've already noticed that these endings are almost identical. O, es, e, en. There is an exception though, and it is with the person nosotros, we. When we have a verb that ends in er, the ending is going to be nosotros hemos. And when we have a verb that ends in ir, the ending for nosotros, we, is going to be imos. Now, the easiest way to remember this is just to remember the ending of the verb. If the ending is er, then nosotros will be hemos. And if the ending is ir, then the ending will be imos. So you can see that the letter of the endings are in hemos and in imos. We already know how to conjugate or change the ending of a verb. Step 1 is always to ask ourselves who is doing the action. Step 2 is to drop the ending. Last week it was AR, this week it will be ER and IR. And step 3 is to change the ending to match the person who is doing the action. Let's look at our 2 examples. For our first example, we have the verb or action word comer, which means to eat. We know comer is an ER verb because it ends in ER. So let's go ahead and conjugate ER, or comer, I'm sorry. My very first question that I have to ask myself is, one, who is doing the question? That is step one. So here, I know that yo, or I, is doing the action. Step two tells me to drop the ending. In this case, the ending is ER. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that ending, and I'm left with com. So I'm going to write com. Step 3 says change the ending to match the person who is doing the action. Who is doing the action? Yo is doing the action. So if I go back to my cheat sheet, I know that the ending that I'm going to use to match the person who is doing the action, yo, is O. So my ending is going to be O. Now we have yo como, I eat. And we are going to do the very same thing for the rest of the subject pronouns or persons. And we end up with tú comes, él, ella, usted come, nosotros comemos, ellos, ellas, ustedes comen. Excelente. Let's move on to our second example. The action word or verb is compartir. In English, this means to share. Now, I know compartir is an IR verb because it ends in IR. Awesome. Let's go ahead and conjugate or change the ending of this verb to match the people who are doing the action. So I'm going to go back to my steps. Step 1 is always who is doing the action. And in this first person, I know that yo is doing the action. So I'm going to go to step 2. Drop the ending. And we know that the ending here is IR. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my ending. And I am left with compart. So I am going to go ahead and write compart. Now that I have done step 2, I am going to go to step 3. Step 3 tells me change the ending to match the person who is doing the action. And who is doing the action? Yo is doing the action. Now that I know that, I'm going to go back to my cheat sheet, and I know that for IR verbs, the ending for yo is going to be O. So I am going to write O. Now I am going to do the very exact same thing that I did for yo for all the other persons or people. Here we go. So let's do it together. Looking at our cheat sheet, we should know that it's going to be tú compartes, él, ella, usted comparte, nosotros compartimos, ellos, ellas, ustedes comparten. And there you have it, chicos. That is as easy as it looks. There is nothing else to it but just to memorize the endings and to change them to match the persons who are doing the action. Remember, we can't say yo comer because that means I to eat. It doesn't make sense in English and it doesn't make sense in Spanish. So we have to change this verb to match the person who is doing the action. Now we have yo como, and that means I eat. Same thing with compartir. We can't say yo compartir because that means I to share. It doesn't make sense in English and it doesn't make sense in Spanish. So we have to change the action word to match the person who is doing the action. So when I change it to yo comparto, now it says I share. So that makes sense in both English and Spanish. This is the end of our lesson today, chicos. Please make sure to watch as many times as you would like in order for it to be clear to you. Please take these notes in your notebook and or feel free to print out these notes from Schoology so that you can have access to them and do all the other activities that you have to do with them, and so that you can prepare for your ER/IR verb conjugation quiz. That is all for today, chicos. Adios.